Hello and welcome to my progress report for Game Asset Pipeline. In the planning stages for my game I created this mood board, which consists of images taken from the game The Hunter, as that's my main inspiration for my game environment. On the left you can see a picture which shows the terrain within the game as well as some of the trees, and there's also a picture of a shack, a kind of hunter's shack which I'll try to recreate in my game, as well as a deer which is the wildlife within the game which I'll also be taking into my game. In the middle there's a picture of a waterfall, as in the centre of my world I'm going to be having a waterfall, which is shown in the sketch at the bottom, also with a hunter's shack to the right of it, and a log pile surrounded by trees. On the right you can see there's different tree types within the actual game, and obviously that means in my world I'll have multiple different tree variants as well. In the bottom right there's a grass texture, which I'll probably be using in my world, as it's just a good quality texture and it will be tileable across the terrain. Here you can see my versioning on GitHub for my game world for Game Asset Pipeline. I have version 1, 2, 3 and 4, however I accidentally named version 4 and version 5 by mistake. This is how the board's progressed so far from a view of a game camera. Here's version 1, 2, 3, and then finally version 4. So this is my first version for the game world. As you can see I've got a basic tree prefab, as well as a log pile, and a box where a hunter's shack will be placed. As you can see in the outline of the trees I do have a herd of deer, which is currently made using cylinders. However, as this is in a white boxing stage, in the future they will be higher quality. This is version 2, where I actually started to make changes to a terrain. Using the terrain tool I was able to raise the terrain and mould where a waterfall is going to be, and it flows into a lake. At the top of the waterfall will be another lake, which will be abundant in wildlife and be surrounded by trees as well, but at the minute I haven't added the trees. As you can see at the bottom, the trees do not fully cover the terrain yet either. In version 3 I changed the prefab of the trees to be better quality ones and better sized for the terrain that I was using, as the previous ones are a bit too small. I've still got the same deer and the same shack placement as well as the log pile. I made slight adjustments to the terrain by smoothing in areas and roughening them. For version 3 that's more or less it, however. As you can see I've placed a lot more trees as well, as they properly cover the terrain as they should. However, they aren't too dense here. In version 4 I added another 8 terrains surrounding the original one, as I thought there was too much Unity empty space and the world was just kind of cut off, so I thought to add mountains around the terrain to give a more enclosed feel to the world. Because I've still got the same assets, and I've got a lake at the top again, which has been smoothened out on the inside. So in version 4 of my game environment I've used a lot of different tools, such as the scatter prefabs tool to place all of these trees along the scene. As there are so many trees it would be impossible to place all these by hand. So I use the scatter prefab tool from Polybrush to do a large place of them, just by drawing them over as if you would with a pen. Another tool that I've used is the terrain tool to modify the terrain to create this mountainous landscape by raising the terrain and also lowering it in areas, such as to create this lake over here. I've used various different shape tools to create the models and prefabs that I use, such as the shape tools to make the trees. To further develop my environment I will be adding textures to the ground, such as grass. I'll also be adding rocky textures towards the hills and mountains. The trees will be further developed to add more detail, as currently they're made just using basic shapes. The same thing can be said for the shack as well as the deer. The log pile will also be improved slightly by adding a wood texture to it. Like I said previously, the mountains will need to add a stone texture as well as maybe some snow towards the top of them. So that's how I've progressed so far with whiteboxing my world. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed.